Pittsburgh, 1924. Dawn has barely broken over the Point Breeze district. The air is thick with limestone and sandstone dust. The sound of sledgehammers cuts through the quiet streets, striking walls that were built to last for centuries. Piece by piece, the facade of Greenlawn comes down. Not because of war, not because of fire, not because its owner went bankrupt. This is a deliberate demolition. Only a few years earlier, Greenlawn was known as architectural crown of Pennsylvania, a European-style chateau standing in the heart of industrial America. Stone hauled from distant quarries, stained glass shipped from Europe, hand-carved oak panels shaped over years of patient labor, and now all of it is being taken apart, one stone at a time. What stops people from looking away is not the destruction itself. It is the question hanging in the dust. Because at the very moment Greenlawn is erased, the empire bearing the name Heinz stands at the height of its power. Factories run day and night. Millions of glass bottles fill American stores, then spread across the world. The founder's name has become a symbol of trust and transparency, and yet his home disappears, not at the hands of enemies, not seized by banks, but by signatures that are painfully familiar. Howard, Clifford, Irene, the children of Henry John Heinz. There is no public scandal, no noisy inheritance battle, only a quiet decision executed without spectacle. This house did not fall because there was no money. It fell because it held too many memories. Why would the children of one of the most powerful and wealthy men in America choose to erase their father's mansion? Why would a monument built from ambition, love, and honor end beneath the blows of its own bloodline? To understand that decision, we cannot stay in 1924. We have to go back to a boy born into smoke and poverty, a man who once lost everything, including the right to use his own name, and a family tragedy that turned a dream into a stone mausoleum. If you want to understand the dark side of legacy and why destruction can sometimes be the only form of release, consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. This story is only just beginning. Pittsburgh, 1844. This city does not wake up to sunlight. It wakes up to coal smoke. Even in daylight, the sky carries a dull gray weight. Snow rarely stays white. Before it touches the ground, it turns dark from iron dust and sulfur. Furnaces burn without pause, filling the air with the constant sound of metal striking metal. This is Pittsburgh in the mid-19th century. An industrial city growing faster than the human body was ever meant to endure. In this city, in 1844, Henry John Heinz is born. He is not born into wealth. He does not belong to the East Coast elite. His family are German immigrants, strict Lutherans, where labor is not just a duty, but a moral obligation. His parents believe discipline is the only way to survive in a place as unforgiving as Pittsburgh. By the age of 8, Henry is already working in the family garden. Not playing, not dreaming. Learning instead how to harvest, package, and sell what his hands have grown. By 12, he is pushing a wooden cart through the neighborhood, selling vegetables door to door. This is not a romantic story polished by time. It is a child learning early that without work, a family has nothing to eat. Yet among thousands of working children in Pittsburgh, Henry Heinz stands apart. He is growing up at the height of deception in the American food industry. In the mid-19th century, there are no consumer protection laws. Flour is mixed with plaster. Cocoa is diluted with brick dust. Horseradish is padded with cheap turnips. To hide this fraud, most products are sold in dark, opaque bottles. Buyers cannot see what they are purchasing until they open the jar at home. And here, a small but dangerous decision appears. Still a young man, Henry Heinz begins selling his mother's horseradish in completely transparent glass jars. The cost is higher. the risk is greater. If the product is flawed, the customer will see it immediately. But that risk creates something rare. The glass jar does not just hold food, it holds a quiet challenge. Look for yourself. I have nothing to hide. In a world where deception is normal, transparency becomes an act of rebellion. The response comes quickly. Customers begin to trust, not because of advertising, but because they can see the truth with their own eyes. This is where the foundation of Heinz's power is laid. Not through money, but through trust. From this moment, an obsession takes shape. An obsession with visibility, an obsession with absolute quality control, an obsession with protecting personal honor at all costs. This is a child shaped by smoke, labor, and discipline. A man who believes that if everything is transparent enough, the world will be fair. But that belief will soon be tested, because the more a person is devoted to transparency, the deeper the wound when they are dragged into darkness. And this still does not explain the real mystery. Why would a man who built his life on visibility and openness later choose to build a sealed fortress like Greenlawn? The answer lies in the first collapse. Pittsburgh, early 1870s. After years of selling horseradish from a garden plot and a pushcart, Henry Heinz was no longer operating as a small street vendor. He began to enter the world of formal business at a time when the United States was expanding rapidly, but with little regulation. In 1869, Henry Heinz married Sarah Sloane Young. Around this same period, he and his partners established a food processing business known as Heinz, Noble and Company. This was not a large corporation. It was a small to mid-sized enterprise, focused on horseradish and related condiments, serving local markets around Pittsburgh. The distinguishing feature remained unchanged. The products were sold in transparent glass jars, allowing customers to see exactly what they were buying. In an industry marked by widespread adulteration, this level of visibility helped the company earn early trust. During the early years of the 1870s, the business showed signs of growth. Production increased. Distribution networks began to form. The company took on loans to invest in equipment and expand its operations. But the American economy at the time rested on fragile ground. In 1873, a nationwide financial crisis erupted. Banks collapsed, credit tightened. The flow of capital across the economy slowed dramatically. In this environment, small and medium-sized businesses were the most vulnerable. Orders declined. Costs rose. Loans that once supported expansion became unsustainable burdens. After nearly 2 years of struggling within a depressed economy, by 1875, Heinz, Noble and Company could no longer meet its financial obligations. The company declared bankruptcy. In 19th-century America, however, bankruptcy was not merely a financial event. It carried severe social consequences. In the atmosphere of suspicion that followed the crisis, failed businessmen were often presumed to be dishonest. Henry Heinz was arrested on suspicion of financial misconduct. There was insufficient evidence to pursue charges. He was released shortly thereafter. Yet the arrest itself caused irreversible damage. His name appeared in newspapers. His personal reputation suffered. Business relationships dissolved. A community that once supported him turned away quietly. Within a short period of time, the Heinz family lost its business, its home, and its primary source of income. The precise monetary value of these losses was never fully recorded. But the collapse of both a business and a household constituted, by the standards of the time, a complete economic downfall. More importantly, Henry Heinz did not face this crisis alone. By 1875, he was the husband of Sarah Sloane Young, and the father of very young children. Responsibility now extended beyond repayment of debt. It became a matter of sustaining a family without stable means. There is no surviving record suggesting that Sarah left or reproached him. What remains indicates that she stayed, even as the family was forced to relinquish its home and most of its possessions. Sarah preserved the structure of daily life as the business collapsed. She maintained basic routines. She shielded the children from the full weight of adult panic. In this context, Henry Heinz began to document every debt he owed, not only those enforceable by law, but also those he believed he carried a moral obligation to repay. This record would later be known as the Book of Moral Debts. Each creditor's name, each amount, nothing omitted. In legal terms, bankruptcy marked an ending. But in Heinz's own thinking, the story remained unfinished. Because to honor this promise, he would have to make a decision even more difficult than accepting failure. He would have to temporarily surrender his own name. So what does a father stripped of public credibility do to ensure his children do not grow up under the shadow of disgrace? The answer lies in the next step. Pittsburgh, late 1875. After the bankruptcy and the arrest followed by his release, Henry Heinz lost more than money. He lost the right to stand behind his own name. In the business culture of late 19th century America, a name that had appeared in newspapers alongside bankruptcy was effectively stripped of credit. Banks would not lend. Partners would not sign contracts. Suppliers hesitated. Legally, Henry Heinz was not permanently barred from doing business. Socially, however, the doors had closed. And this is where the story turns. Rather than leaving commerce altogether, Henry Heinz chose a quieter path. He remained in the food industry, but his name no longer appeared on the front of the business. Beginning around 1876, the enterprises he helped run were placed under the names of family members. Different names appeared on legal documents. Different signatures were presented to banks. Henry Heinz worked from behind the scenes. No office bearing his name, no title, no public authority. Yet he controlled everything. Product formulas, processing methods, quality standards, the way goods were packaged and distributed. Surviving records suggest that he worked almost without rest. 16 to 18-hour days were common. Mornings in the factory, evenings with the books, nights spent calculating costs down to the smallest unit. Zittern. Throughout this period, there is no evidence that Henry Heinz attempted to rehabilitate his reputation through public statements. He did not answer journalists. He did not appear in public forums. He did not try to erase the memory of the collapse of 1875. Instead, he focused on one task: repayment. Not only debts that remained legally enforceable, but also those the law no longer required him to pay. Each creditor listed in the earlier Book of Moral Debts. Each amount settled quietly. No announcement. No public acknowledgments. No one outside a small circle knew that the man behind these repayments was Henry Heinz himself. To the market, the name Heinz seemed to have vanished. But this was not the most important part. In 19th century business culture, reputation was not restored by promises. It was restored only through sustained action over time. By the late 1880s, after more than a decade of working in obscurity, signs of change began to appear. Former creditors confirmed that their accounts had been fully repaid. Banks noted a consistent repayment history. Partners became willing to sign agreements again. There was no formal announcement marking this moment. No ceremony, no headlines. But on new legal documents, a familiar name returned: Henry Heinz. He brought his real name back into the brand, not through apology, but through a clean record built over years of silence. The moment passed without spectacle, yet its significance was decisive. The name Heinz, once associated with failure and suspicion, had been redeemed through demonstrated credibility. And here, a deeper shift took place. Henry Heinz understood that reputation could be stripped away quickly, but protecting it required more than honesty. It required symbols. It required scale. It required something large enough that the name could never again be pushed into the shadows. Yet this still does not explain what came next. What kind of symbol would a man build after he had already learned how easily a name could disappear? The answer lies in the ambition that was just beginning to take shape. Pittsburgh, late 1880s. By the end of the decade, Henry Heinz was no longer a man trying to prove himself to the past. The battle to reclaim his name had already ended quietly years earlier. Now he occupied a different position. The business bearing the Heinz name no longer survived on sympathy or memories of failure. Production was organized into disciplined systems. Quality was controlled down to the smallest detail. The Heinz market extended beyond Pittsburgh, reaching into other states. This was not an emotional recovery. It was the condition of a system that had stabilized. And it was at this moment that a deeper shift occurred in Henry Heinz's world view. If money had once been a means of survival and repair, it now became a tool for defining position. He no longer asked whether the business was profitable. He began asking a different question, one less economic and more about power. How long will this last? Pittsburgh remained a city of coal, smoke, and steel. Reputations could be built quickly, and they could be destroyed just as fast by a single economic shock. Henry Heinz had lived through that reality. As a result, he no longer sought wealth alone. He sought a form of presence that could not be easily erased. In the late 1880s, Henry Heinz began making extended journeys to Europe, not for leisure, but for observation. He traveled through France, England, Germany. He walked through castles that had stood for centuries, through aristocratic estates passed down across generations, through structures where power was not measured by short-term profit, but by endurance. In Europe, Henry Heinz encountered a form of legacy that young America scarcely possessed, not money alone, but space, stone walls, gardens preserved over centuries, rooms filled with memory where history did not need explanation because it existed materially. For a man whose name had once vanished from the business world within months, this was not an architectural curiosity. It was a lesson in permanence. And from that lesson, a new need took shape. Not merely to build a business, but to build something that could remain even when the individual was gone. A tangible legacy. In letters and notes from the late 1880s, Henry Heinz began referring to the idea of an unusual house, not simply as a place to live, but as a form of protection. Protection from industrial smoke, protection of memory against public volatility, and protection of the Heinz name from ever being erased again. But here, a quiet contradiction emerged. A structure built to shelter. Might it truly become a place to live? Or would it become something too heavy for those required to live inside it? The question remained unanswered. Because to understand it, we must follow the next step. The moment Henry Heinz decided to turn ambition into stone, glass, and space, would the symbol he was about to build become a home or a trap? The answer lies in the next chapter. Pittsburgh, 1892. After years of observation and accumulation, Henry Heinz made a decisive move. He purchased a large property in Point Breeze, a district regarded at the time as the pinnacle of Pittsburgh's social order. Point Breeze was not a place for newly wealthy outsiders. It was the territory of long-established families, names tied to banking, steel, and railroads. Heinz's arrival here was a clear statement. He did not come to blend in. He came to stand as an equal. Yet the way he began set him apart from many industrialists of his era. Henry Heinz did not demolish the existing house on their property. Instead, the structure was lifted, moved deeper into the grounds, and expanded outward. This was more than an engineering decision. It mirrored the way he treated his own life. He did not erase the past. He built upon it. From that foundation, Greenlawn began to take shape. Architecturally, the house carried a distinctly European character. French influences combined with Tudor elements. High roofs, small turrets, and tall chimneys rose against the coal-gray Pennsylvania sky, but Greenlawn's true significance lay beyond its exterior. Inside, Henry Heinz incorporated modern technologies that were rare for the period. Electric lighting was installed throughout, while many households still relied on gas lamps. Air filtration systems were designed to reduce coal dust from the industrial city. Heating and ventilation were engineered to maintain stability year-round. Light became a central element. Large expanses of glass, winter gardens, greenhouses that connected living spaces directly to nature. Greenlawn was not conceived as a display of wealth. It was designed as a buffer. A controlled world positioned between polluted Pittsburgh and the family ideal Heinz sought to protect. Within that vision, Sarah occupied the central role. Letters and surviving records indicate that she was directly involved in imagining Greenlawn, not as a palace, but as a home for generations. A place where children could grow up surrounded by light and greenery. A place where the family could close the gates and leave the noise of the world outside. For Henry Heinz, this was more than a residence. It was an act of protection. Protection for the woman who stayed when he lost everything. Protection for the family against smoke, judgment, and the fragility of reputation. Greenlawn became his artificial paradise, a space controlled down to the smallest detail, where light, air, and daily order were carefully regulated. Yet it was here that a quiet paradox began to form. A place created to shelter demanded absolute control. A family dream built of stone and glass, but was there room within it for human fragility? The question did not yet require an answer. Greenlawn was still under construction. Walls were still rising, gardens were still being planted, and at the center of it all stood the woman. This entire structure was built to protect. But what happens when that woman disappears? The answer lies in the next chapter. Pittsburgh, Thanksgiving Day, 1894. While most families in Pittsburgh are preparing their holiday meals, Greenlawn exists in a different atmosphere. Doctors move in and out. Urgent footsteps echo through hallways, still new. Outside the windows, late autumn air hangs cold and damp, the kind of weather the city has known for generations. In a bedroom on the second floor, Sarah Heinz is dying. She is 51 years old. The cause recorded is pneumonia. At the end of the 19th century, pneumonia is not simply a diagnosis. It is a sentence. Antibiotics do not exist. Respiratory care amounts to warmth and prayer. There is nothing money can buy to change the outcome. Henry Heinz can control production lines. He can control quality down to the smallest detail. But in this moment, he is powerless. Only days earlier, Sarah had been walking these newly finished corridors, arranging flowers, discussing family plans, thinking about the first winter in the house built for the rest of their lives. Then she is gone. Death arrives quickly, and it leaves behind a void Greenlawn was never designed to hold. From that moment, the house changes its function. Greenlawn is no longer a place to live. It becomes a place to preserve. Henry Heinz does not leave. He stays, and he begins filling absence with objects. In the years after 1894, Greenlawn gradually transforms into something unfamiliar. Not because of architecture, but because of how it is used. Collections grow, antiquities from Europe, artifacts from the Middle East and Asia, objects carrying the weight of civilizations long gone. But the most striking symbol of this transformation is time itself. Clocks, grandfather clocks, wall clocks, mantel clocks, pocket watches. They appear in nearly every room, and all of them are kept wound. The sound of green lawn is no longer conversation. It is the uneven ticking of dozens of timekeeping machines. A house obsessed with time, by a man who cannot accept that time has taken what mattered most. Meanwhile, Henry Heinz's children grow up inside this space. Howard, Clifford, Irene. They do not lack material comfort. They receive strict education. They are loved in the way of a devoted father. But Greenlawn is no longer a home in the ordinary sense. It is a living museum, where everything has a fixed place, where order outweighs spontaneity, where memory is preserved more carefully than emotion. Henry Heinz loves his children, but that love is accompanied by control, discipline at the table, rules in daily life, silence treated as a virtue. There is no record of cruelty, but there are few signs of warmth. The house built to protect a family now protects the memory of someone who is gone. And in this period, a deeper contradiction takes shape. Greenlawn grows ever more perfect materially, and ever colder humanly. When people disappear, objects begin to rule. Children raised in a space like this do not only learn obedience, they learn observation, they learn endurance, and slowly they learn the desire to escape. But their choice has not yet arrived, because before Greenlawn is rejected, it must witness one more death, the death of the man who created it. And when that happens, the children raised inside a mausoleum will have to decide how they want to live. Pittsburgh, early 20th century. As the new century begins, Greenlawn is complete in material terms. But for those living inside it, the house is no longer growing alongside a family. It is an emblem already finished. Howard, Clifford, and Irene Heinz grow up surrounded by spaces designed to outlast human life. Long corridors, silent rooms, collections that are not meant to be touched. They live in a place where everything stands for something, for success, for honor, for the stature of their father. And that weight creates pressure. Henry Heinz loves his children. There is no record disputing that. He cares deeply about their education, morality, and discipline. But that love is always paired with standards. Every action is observed. Every choice measured against the expectations attached to the Heinz name. The living space allows little room for error, because everything reflects the image of a man admired by society. Greenlawn lacks the natural disorder of ordinary family life. No messy rooms, no casually displaced objects, no unstructured noise. Order is maintained as a core value. The house functions like a museum open every day, where children learn to walk softly, speak quietly, and observe more than express. Henry Heinz believes discipline builds character. And for a man once erased from public life, control becomes the only defense against repetition of past humiliation. But this is where the contradiction forms. Greenlawn was built to protect the family. Yet, by becoming a monument to one man, it narrows the living space of everyone else. The children do not inherit a home. They inherit a completed narrative, where their roles are already defined. Growing up under that shadow, a quiet desire begins to emerge. Not open rebellion, not confrontation, but a longing to live in a space that does not have to represent anything, a place that does not preserve memory, does not protect image, does not require moving carefully to avoid disturbing the past. As these children reach adulthood, the world outside Greenlawn is changing rapidly. The new century brings speed, music, more pragmatic values, an America with little patience for castles rooted in the previous century. The contrast sharpens. Greenlawn represents stillness. Septum. The outside world represents movement. Their father built a paradise, but they grew up in winter. This tension does not explode immediately. It accumulates, quietly, year by year, through silent meals, through rooms that are never altered, and a moment that cannot be avoided, draws closer. While the father lives, green lawn is law. But when the father disappears, that law loses its authority. What will happen to green lawn when the largest shadow inside it is no longer there? The answer lies in the next chapter. Pittsburgh, spring of 1919. Green lawn does not die when its rooms begin to empty. It only truly dies when the man who created it is gone. In May 1919, Henry John Heinz dies of pneumonia. The same illness that took Sarah 25 years earlier returns, this time claiming the man who spent his entire life trying to control everything. During the days of mourning, green lawn fulfills its historical role one final time. Heinz's body lies in the Great Hall. Flowers from the greenhouses fill the space. Industrial leaders, politicians, and civic figures of Pittsburgh pass through the wrought iron gates. For a brief moment, the house becomes exactly what Henry Heinz once wanted it to be, a symbol. Then the doors close, and silence begins. After the funeral, green lawn is no longer a home, but it is not yet a ruin. It becomes an asset with no clear future. The authority now rests with Howard Heinz. Howard does not enter green lawn carrying the memories of its builder. He enters it with the mindset of the 20th century. Post-World War I. America has changed. Federal income tax is now a permanent reality. Progressive taxation begins to strike directly at large assets that generate no revenue. A mansion of more than 30 rooms, 10 greenhouses, a permanent staff of servants, stokers, gardeners, and maintenance workers. Pittsburgh winters are long. Heating a massive stone structure like green lawn requires enormous quantities of coal. The costs are continuous, and the estate produces nothing in return. Green lawn does not generate profit. It does not support production. It creates no new value. It only consumes. In the economic language of the new era, green lawn becomes a white elephant, a sacred asset that cannot be put to use, yet bleeds its owner simply by existing. But money is not the only burden. Green lawn is inseparable from Henry Heinz himself. His discipline, his grief, his uncompromising standards. Every chair carries memory. Every wall reinforces an old order. To continue living at green lawn would mean continuing to live inside their father's life. The family searches for an alternative. They offer green lawn to the city of Pittsburgh. They propose transforming it into a museum, a library, or a community institution. The response from the city is clear. The maintenance costs exceed public budgets. Charitable organizations and universities decline as well. Even without purchase cost, the long-term burden is simply too great. By the early 1920s, green lawn stands largely empty. Servants are dismissed. The greenhouses cloud over. The gardens fall out of control. The paradise built to resist Pittsburgh's soot begins to erode under time itself. The final choice is no longer emotional. It becomes administrative. In 1924, the family signs an agreement to sell the land to developers. The condition is explicit. The site must be completely cleared. Green lawn is sentenced. Not in anger, not in hatred, but because it no longer has a place in the future. The walls are dismantled piece by piece. Stone, glass, and wood are sold off. A house designed to last for centuries disappears within months. For the heirs, destroying green lawn is not erasing their father. It is the only way to escape his shadow. Yet one question remains unanswered. If green lawn is gone, where does Henry Heinz's legacy truly reside? The answer belongs to the final chapter. Destroying to preserve a legacy. Green lawn did not disappear in a fire, not because of war, and not because of poverty. It disappeared because it no longer belonged to its time. After 1924, the stone walls designed to endure for centuries were dismantled piece by piece. Carved oak panels, stained glass imported from Europe, limestone and sandstone that once defined one of Pennsylvania's proudest architectural statements. All of it was sold as building material. Fragments of a private dream scattered into the lives of people who would never know its original meaning. The land that once held Henry Heinz's personal paradise was subdivided. New houses rose in its place, ordinary, quiet, devoid of the ambition that once sought to challenge time itself. But Greenlawn did not vanish completely. What Henry Heinz had gathered in solitude, antique clocks, artifacts, history preserved behind glass, was released from its walls. The collections were donated to museums. What had once served private grief became public heritage. And from the absence left behind by Greenlawn, a different kind of monument emerged. Heinz Memorial Chapel. Not a fortress for one family, but an open space for students, residents, and generations who would never know the name Heinz as a living person. Here, legacy is not locked behind iron gates. It lives among people. Today, if you walk through Point Breeze, you can still find the old wrought iron fence and the former carriage house hidden within the block. The last physical witnesses of a vanished kingdom. But if you step into any supermarket in the world, from New York to Tokyo, you will see a familiar name on the shelf. Henry Heinz, not carved into stone, but printed on glass. His true legacy does not rest in a lost mansion. It lives in trust, repeated millions of times each day. The story of Greenlawn is not about a house. It is about power, money, and the limits of trying to make oneself immortal through material things. Sometimes, to preserve a legacy, its physical form must be destroyed. And the question that remains does not belong only to the Heinz family. If it were you, would you hold on to the house of the past, or destroy it to save the future? If you want to continue exploring estates that once defined power, families who traded the past to survive the present, and legacies born from loss, the next stories are waiting for you on screen. If this story made you think, leave a comment. And if you want to continue this journey through history, like the video and subscribe. Thank you for watching. See you in the next story.